Hello everyone. Welcome to the Ocean Sound Storytelling Channel. I am the storyteller, and today I am so happy to be with you. You may be curled up under a blanket or listening with your ears on a soft pillow. Wherever you are, whatever the time, thank you for being here. Before we begin with an interesting story, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so I know you enjoy relaxing moments like this. Where are you from? Send me a little hello in the comments. I would love to know which corner of the world you are listening from. Now, relax your body. Close your eyes and let the gentle waves take you into a gentle story, a little strange, a little mysterious, but warm enough to lull you to sleep all night long. So, are you ready? Tonight's story begins. Don't open the door. Did you really think you'd get away with this? I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. I saw you. I saw everything. What the hell are you talking about? I didn't do anything. Please, don't play dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The bag, the key, and that... Wait. You followed me? Followed you? No, I stumbled upon you. I didn't even know you were there until I saw you go inside. Inside where? Don't do this, please. Don't pretend you've forgotten. I honestly don't know what you're talking about. The basement, Marco, that damn basement. Why? What are you hiding down there? You're insane. You're spying on me and then making up stories. What was in the bag? What? The bag, Marco. What was in it? That's none of your business. That's not an answer. What was in the bag? Nothing that concerns you. You've already said that, but it's not true, is it? Because if it was nothing, why would you hide the bag in the basement? Stop this. I won't stop. Not until you tell me the truth. I told you? It's none of your business. If you don't want it to be my business, why won't you just tell me? Anything, Marco. Give me a reason to believe you. You don't have to believe me. Marco, please. What did you do? Nothing. Don't make me go down there. Don't. Don't what? Don't go down there. Why? What will you do if I go? Nothing. Just don't. Tell me what you're hiding. I'm not hiding anything. Don't lie to me. Your voice, I can hear it trembling. You know what? I'm going down there. No, don't. Stop. Yelena, wait. Why should I stop, Marco? What will happen if I keep going? Please don't. Just stay here. I won't. I'm tired of your secrecy. I'm opening the door. Yelena, I'm telling you, don't touch that door. Why not? Because you won't be able to unsee what you see. What is that supposed to mean? What did you do, Marco? Nothing. It's not my fault. I didn't want this to happen. What didn't you want to happen? Whatever it is, it's too late to turn back now. I'm opening the door. Yelena, I'm begging you. Leave it closed. Begging me? You? After all the things you're hiding from me? This is your last chance, Marco. Tell me the truth, or I'm opening it. I can't tell you, but you wouldn't understand. What wouldn't I understand? That you did something? That you're hiding something terrible? You think I won't understand because I'm stupid? No, that's not it. It's just, please, don't open the door. That's all I'm asking. I'm opening it. Yelena, don't. What is this? Marco, what is this? I told you not to open it. Is this blood? On the floor? Marco, this can't be real. Jelena, let's just get out of here. You don't have to look. Wait, this is the bag. Marco, what's inside? What's in this bag? Don't open it. Haven't you already learned that nothing will stop me? I'm opening it. Jelena, please, don't. Oh my God, Marco, this is... I know what it is. Whose arm is this, Marco? What the hell is going on here? It's not what you think. Then what is it? Please explain, because I see a severed arm in a bag, and I see blood. Explain this exclamation mark. I didn't kill her. Killed? Marco, you're insane. What murder? Severed arms don't fall from the sky. Who is this? I don't know her name. You don't know her name? Marco, are you out of your mind? It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. What didn't you mean to happen? What are you talking about? For her to die? Who to die? What happened, Marco? Tell me now, or I'm calling the police. No, you can't call the police. Why? Why not? This is murder, Marco. Or at least it looks like it. Tell me the truth. Elena, I tried to save her. Save her? From what? From them. What others? Don't twist your words. Who are they? You won't believe me. Try me. Because right now, I think you're a dangerous lunatic who kills people. I didn't kill anyone. Whose arm is this, Marco? I told you I don't know her name. But I know it's not just hers. What does that mean? Not just hers. There are more. More of what? More people? More arms? What are you talking about? Them. They're here. They? Marco, stop with the riddles. Explain exclamation mark. I won't say anything. Not here. Not in front of them. In front of who? We're alone. We're not alone, Yelena. We're never alone. Marco, who are they? Stop with the riddles and tell me what's going on. I can't tell you. If you find out, they'll find out. Who will find out? What are you talking about? Do you even realize how insane you sound? Insane? Jelena, if you knew what I know, you'd never sleep again. Stop it. I don't believe in your fantasies. This is the real world, Marco. This is blood. This is an arm. This is... Wait, what's this on the floor? This looks like a symbol. Marco, what is this? Don't look at it. Don't look at it. I've already seen it, Marco. It looks like a pentagram or something. Are you in a cult? Is this some kind of sickness? Are you a murderer? I'm not a murderer. Stop accusing me of things you don't understand. Then explain. Stop being silent and explain. Because I can't take this anymore. Fine, fine. You want the truth? I'll tell you. But you won't like it. Try me. Anything is better than this uncertainty. They're not human. What? They're not human. What you see, what you feel, those aren't human beings. They're something else. Marco, do you even hear how crazy that sounds? No wonder you're paranoid. You're talking about what? Demons? Monsters? Stop it. I'm not crazy. Yelena, this isn't the first time this has happened. They've been here for years, decades, maybe even centuries, and no one knows until it's too late. What the hell are you talking about? Their rules are clear. You don't speak of them. You don't touch their victims. And if you break the rules, you're next. Marco, you're talking about this as if it's real, but this is just, I don't know, some kind of paranoid story. There is no they. These are your hallucinations. Does this look like a hallucination, Yelena? Look at the blood on the floor. Look at the arm. Do you really think I'd make all of this up? But that doesn't prove they're demons or whatever you're claiming. This could be, I don't know, the mafia, a cult, someone real. I wish it was, but it's not. It's not something you can understand until you see them. I see blood, Marco. I see the symbol on the floor. But none of that proves your story. This is madness. Pure madness. Yelena, just listen to me. If you want to get out of here alive, you need to stop digging deeper. They already know you're here. Marco, this is too much. I'm calling the police. I can't do this alone. You can't call the police. Yelena, they can't help. Why? Why not? Because the police have already tried, and there isn't a single officer who's walked out of this basement alive. Stop it. Listen to yourself, Marco. This is... Shh. Yelena, quiet. What? Do you hear that? I don't hear anything. Marco, stop it. Quiet, Yelena. They're coming. Who's coming? Stop it. Stop playing games. Yelena, please, don't breathe too loudly. Just stay still. What? What is that sound? Marco, what is it? I told you not to open the door. Now you've woken them. Who are they, Marco? What is that? What are those lights? Those eyes? I told you. Marco, what's happening? It's too late, Yelena. It's too late. No, Marco, don't do this. Don't leave me here. I'm sorry. You have to face this alone. No, don't. Marco, don't leave. Marco. Marco. Yelena, listen to me. Listen carefully. Stay still. Don't move. If you stay still and don't make a sound, maybe they won't see you. What? What won't see me? Marco, what are these creatures? These eyes? These hands? What the hell am I looking at? Don't look at them. Don't look into their eyes. But they're everywhere. What do I do? How do I not look? Yelena, just close your eyes. Breathe deeply. They can sense fear. The more you're afraid, the closer they'll come. How can I not be afraid? Marco, what are these things? I told you, they're not human. They're things. Even I don't know exactly what they are. I just know they're not from this world. You're insane. You're completely insane. This isn't real. This is a dream. It has to be a dream. Yelena, this isn't a dream. If it were, you wouldn't feel the cold. You wouldn't feel their breath on your neck. What? What did you just say? On my neck? Don't turn around. Ah! Marco, they're here. I see them. Don't look into their eyes, Jelena. I told you, close your eyes. I can't. There are too many of them. They're staring at me. Jelena, calm down. Breathe. You have to breathe. Marco, they're getting closer. Marco, please, help me. I can't. They've already seen you. What? What does that mean? Marco, tell me what that means. It means it's over. There's nothing I can do. It's too late. No, don't say that. There has to be a way. There's a way out, right? The only way was to never wake them. Please, I can't do this. Marco, they're touching me. Marco, don't scream. Don't give them a reason. I can't take it anymore. Ah! Jelena, no exclamation mark. Marco, they're pulling me. Marco, help me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't leave me. Don't. Jelena, forgive me. No, Marco. Ah! I told you not to open the door. Renaissance. The view from the first floor bedsit window tonight was dreary. Great drifts of spume hurtled across the road, leaving shallow lakes to creep across the promenade and pour back into the ocean. Richard turned away and sat morosely on the threadbare chair beside the bed, dully regarding the marked and faded wallpaper, the fly-specked single light bulb oscillating gently in the draft from the ill-fitting windows. He turned his attention to the faded and patterned floor covering. If he looked closely, images danced before his eyes. The head of a huge silverback gorilla stared belligerently at him. Elsewhere, gibbons swung elegantly from a treetop. A demon glared at the periphery of his vision. But his favorite of all, which he could discern the most easily, a lissom and naked young woman, leaning invitingly against a doorframe, with raised knee shielding the promise of a hinted pudenda. He tore his eyes away and checked his watch. 5 o'clock. A long time yet. Then the usual Wednesday footsteps pittered along the hallway below, as he had known they would, and splashed down the entrance steps and onto the footpath. He craned his neck and saw the familiar, rain-coated figure, umbrella turned into the wind, pittering along the street, ridiculous high-heeled shoes dancing amongst the puddles. They were red. They always were. He watched the figure until it rounded the corner. Once gone, it was as if it had never existed. Ephemeral, like life itself. The heavy overcast drew the fading light into full darkness sooner than it might have, but much too soon yet. All that could be done was to watch the street lamps down the length of the promenade floating in their own pools of shifting light, like so many illuminated masts in harbor, their reflected light sending streamers of rain runneling almost horizontal on the outside of the windows. Richard switched on his own, gently swinging light bulb. Instantly, in the window's reflective depths, the ghost of his sallow face stared blankly back with haunted eyes. He turned off the light, and his ephemeral self blinked out. Another ghost laid to rest, dark. He closed his eyes. Without light, the harsh demarcation of the four corners of the room became infinity. He floated in its comforting, amniotic embrace, attached to the present only by an umbilical whipcord of anxiety. In the end, the pull proved too much, and he was drawn back to harsh reality, like the sudden deliverance of a breech birth hacked into being by the surgeon's knife. He strode across to the window to ease his cramping muscles. The fight, already lost as he had known it would be, reborn. His night eyes saw the darkness bleeding rivers, shedding blood-thick tears down the outside of the window pane, reflected from the passing car's taillights and the wildly tossing promenade lights to pool gelatinous on the windowsill. He imagined he felt a wetness on his hands, a warm and glutinous, congealing wetness. He followed the raindrops across the window with his finger and left on the inside an imaginary, sanguine tracery. He looked at his hands as if for the first time, wondering at their unfamiliarity, their symmetry, their grossness, recognizing their disguised strength beneath the tremor, recognizing also that the unsteadiness was an excitement taken beyond control that shivered its way down the length of his body, a thirst that demanded to be slaked. The night was full dark now. He opened the door and left softly. The outer door swung shut behind him, a sepulchral sound entombing the stillness of the musty hallway. He paused, head hooded against the needling rain, and peered through the sheeting curtains that obscured the view one moment, then swept on the next. The promenade swam with color, a surrealist nightmare of spiraling light and plunging shadow. By comparison, he felt himself a monochrome shade, an empty vessel, drifting powerless in a roaring ocean of color that had no other purpose than to toss him to and fro until his destiny had been fulfilled, and then return him spent to his harbor, bereft, befouled, bedizened, red, blood red, red. The pavement orgasmed with the color. Pools of liquid carmine shimmered at his feet, as fitful as a broken promise, pigmented only by the festooning lights. Once around the corner, away from the promenade's glitter, the pooling rain became dark and wet and cold again, and Richard's head cleared. The madness was at his back now, but his way still lay forward. into the dark. The street in front was empty. Houses on each side, isolated cocoons of brick and light and love. The only sound that of Richard's footsteps measuring their length through the puddles, and the gurgle of rain cascading down the gutters. Richard slipped a hand inside his coat pocket and caressed the slivered blade that nestled there. The ice-keen touch upon his skin raised the hackles of his neck. Waves of anticipation raced down his spine and through his fingers, which spasmed. The stiletto point pricked, and he withdrew his hand to savor the sensation. Blood globbled on his fingertip like a black polyp, and Richard raised it to his eyes in fascination. Then it was dashed away by the rain, which carried it in thin streamers across his hand. He put it to his mouth and sucked, refreshed by the cool wetness of the rain, seasoned with the heavy tang of his own blood. He suckled a moment, then moved on. Like a fading echo, he kept to the shadows, flitting from doorway to doorway, avoiding the ubiquitous, questing cameras with the ease of long familiarity. Narrow alleys drifted by to his left. Dark, anonymous canals choked with the jetsam of urban life. He passed these by. An island of brilliance signaled further on, neon lights searing holes in the dark, caking the road with an impasto of color, so thick, so scarlet, so palpable, and yet as insubstantial as breath. Richard's own breath came with slow, measured control, resting so low and soft in his throat that it could have been a purr. He took shelter in a deep shop doorway, transfixed by the neon flicker, and waited. Cars planed by, streaming rubied skeins beneath their wheels. The zoom of tires, louder than their engines. In the glow of the neon lights, car doors opened, clunked shut. Voices cried, footsteps splashed, running, pattering up the steps of the cinema, and halted while hands flapped, shook at sodden raincoats, then hurried on into the foyer to be swallowed up, lost to a world as transient as their own. Brief lives. Richard watched and waited, measuring the passing time by the measure of his breath. It beat in time with his pumping heart. Red, 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 red blood red, red blood red. Outgoing picture-goers from the early program began to trickle out, raising umbrellas against the rain, in pairs, in groups, singly. Richard left the shelter of the doorway, heading for the car park. The cinema car park was small and little used, emptying quickly now as the patrons swept homewards to their fires and their families. Richard mingled briefly with the slowing trickle of incoming patrons, as he made his way to the rear of the building, with the occasional patron leaving by the convenient rear exit. He edged into a gap between the bulk refuse containers and the boiler housing and melded into the dark. His position commanded a sweep of the car park entrance on the one hand, and on the other, a view of the few remaining cars. One by one, they cleared as their passengers scampered by his hiding place, family groups squealing against the lashing rain, individuals going their separate ways. Richard's heart pounded with the effort of holding still, of awaiting the moment. And the moment came. A lone figure scampered down the short flight of steps, down from the rear Fire exit. Last to leave, as it always was, coat drawn over its head, red shoes pittering their regular Wednesday footsteps, as they had pittered earlier in the evening. Silent as shadow, Richard stepped out, staying a startled gasp with a hand cupped across the figure's mouth, and drew it to the shelter of the bins. His fingers clamped hard across its face, whilst terrified eyes stared wildly into his own snake pit pupils. Arms and legs flailed, then stiffened in shock as Richard drew his knife and stilled the working mouth with a single thrust, skewering the blade into the palate through the base of the jaw. Lips grimaced in pain. Eyes squeezed tight shut against the nightmare, chest heaving with a locked-in scream. Blood welled in the mouth, down the nose, trickled, flowed, torrented. The slick, sensuous feel caressed Richard's fingers as it channeled down the blade. At its touch, he jerked the blade free, the jaw gagging slack, and drove it between the breasts and up, working it inward, twisting, grating. Rich, dark blood bubbled, gouted from the gaping mouth, spouted with air expelled from the riven lungs. He withdrew the blade and stared at questing eyes that glazed over as he watched, supporting the body that slumped in his grasp, and as the head lolled, let the woman drop like a discarded rag. Richard stood over the huddled heap, spent, supporting himself on the wall, watching with lackluster eyes the dark pool spreading from the placental evisceration of the torn body. The rain lapped at the edges, washing it away in rivulets. He stepped out into the car park and walked quietly away, head bowed against the rain, in common with the other few pedestrians hurrying home for shelter. As though in expiation, the rain lashed down even harder, washing the body clean, rinsing the blood into the gutters. Richard pulled his hood down across his tormented eyes, then hunched his shoulders against the torrent. Behind him, the faint sound of laughter mocked from within the cinema. He let the laughter wash over him dully and raised his face to the sky, mingling its tears with his own. The glistening street arrowed back to the seafront, a dark, lonely fairway to a hopeless harbor, leaving death behind. Leaching into the rain, he drew a shuddering breath and took a first, hesitant step home, reborn once more to a hopeless, pointless life, until the next dead, red rain time. And on the vinyl floor, the demon leered. The hour approaches, gold and silver thread shimmer in my candlelit chamber. The figures of 3 noble women, standing beneath a garden tree in the tapestry opposite, feel as much part of me as the veins in my still, slender hands. One holds a bunch of flowers, one carries a basket of eggs, and the third stretches out her hand to a pelican. Symbol of motherhood, it is said the pelican will pluck its breast and feed the young on its own blood rather than see them starve. I can almost hear the mocking laughter of lives mercilessly cut short. In my dreams, the piercing cries of unquiet souls falsely accused. Grisly husks with popping eyes, whose contortions form a grotesque parody of life. Your time will come. We are waiting. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing, while the rest of my body crumbles. My ears hear well enough. In the early years, wigs lent majesty. Later, they covered the true extent of my hair loss. In my next dream, I enter a hall of mirrors, long forbidden in my palaces. Wigless and mask-free, I recoil at the gray tufts springing from a once noble crown. I'm dismayed by the sunken hollows that pass for cheeks, and my neck is a cavern of worms. I open my mouth to find stumps rattling in my jaw like beaten soldiers. My eyes, once glorious pools of gold brown, are blackened pits. I wake up yelling, and Cat is there to soothe my brow, as she did when I was a child. Yet Cat died years ago. You killed her with overwork. The hour approaches. Only last week, I was indulging in my favorite candies, and my neck was bedecked in a fine ruff with loops of hanging pearls. Since then, I've barely eaten, though my thirst is unquenchable. Knowing I no longer have the stomach for wine, my maids pour weak ale down my unprotesting throat. That way, I live longer. Pain and melancholy have been my bedfellows for so long. No amount of bloodletting of the body's humors can rid me of them. I must remain upright. I was once a tall, striking creature with auburn hair. Unfortunately, my womanly body was regarded as unfit to rule on account of its corruption, the result of Eve's fall from grace in the Garden of Eden. I had nightmares of a ghastly preacher shaking his fist at me and inveighing against the monstrous regiment of women whose ruling over men was deemed repugnant to nature. However, at the key moment, my imperfect flesh became wedded to the body politic. By some mysterious process, it rose above physical limitations and took on a perfect form. Early on, I learnt to suppress any sign of weakness, and use my femininity as a weapon. Born under the sign of Virgo, I was married only to my people. As expressed in my clothing, I sacrificed self for their symbolic love. Over the years, this red-painted cochineal mouth has issued commands, witty rejoinders, sarcastic riposts. When it suited me, occasional snippets of wisdom. These childlike lips had courtiers running to do my bidding, trembling lest they displeased me and lost their heads. Little by little, I emerged from feebleness, impressing statesmen, and learned men alike. On my progresses through the country, I was said to have the common touch, waiting for hours to catch a glimpse. Ordinary people were touched by my concern for their comfort and welfare. Admittedly, there was precious little to be had in some of the city's hovels. You put on a good show. But the hour approaches. Finally, my supreme moment came. The defeat of the Spanish Armada turned my country's fortunes around. After exhorting the men encamped at Tilbury to victory before they set off in their cannoned ships, I emerged as Gloriana. I may have had the body of a feeble woman, but proved I had the heart and stomach of a king. Perhaps triumph entrenched me, made me more like my father. Loved and feared in equal measures, he bestrode the court like a colossus. A rule which started full of promise grew tyrannical. People feared for their lives. Now you fear for yours. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing. You may wonder how I could love a man who in one foul swoop instigated the destruction of my mother when I was not yet 3. My first brush with death. Even now, I'm unsure whether it was love or fear that drove our relationship. I never spoke to anyone directly about my mother, least of all the king when he lived. My early sagacity may have saved me during my most perilous moments. During my sister Mary's reign, my very survival hung in the balance. I died many times in my mind then. The consummate player, I played for the highest stakes and won by a hair's breadth. Even when I succeeded to the throne, I rarely let my guard down. Those I've truly trusted have been few and far between. But if I outranked them all in terms of flair, capacity, and intellect, I didn't do it alone. I took advice from the best counselors in the land, namely my dear Cecil, who served me faithfully until he died a few years ago, and whose son now takes his place. Perhaps the older Cecil didn't always please me, but without him, the burden of politics presses heavily. The well of depression, which first opened when I lost Kat, my governess and dear friend, deepened. I miss her. Take those leeches away, and let me have some peace. Nay, none of it feels like winning now. There's nothing triumphant about lying swaddled in a heap of cushions. even if they are in Richmond Palace's private quarters. Our family often decamped here to escape the turmoil of state affairs. Yet this dreamscape of towers and turrets overlooking the river has become a glorified prison. A servant stokes the fire, keeping off the last of winter's chill before spring's sweet arrival, which I won't see. With each passing day, my ladies add more cushions, so when my legs buckle from the strain of standing for hours, no bones get broken. You need to rest and get some sleep, Your Majesty, except to lie down is to face death. Your hour approaches. Ignoring the doctor's wheedling, I remain fixed as the northern star. He and Cecil work in tandem. The smooth politician, who isn't a patch on his father, and the oily medic grown greedy on royal patronage. Between them, they will pluck the name of my successor from their childless queen's lips if it's the last thing they do. Of course, I should never have agreed to have the coronation ring removed from my finger to relieve the swelling. I'd not taken it off since my coronation all those years ago, and nothing has been right since. However, I'm adamant that my mother of pearl locket ring remains on my finger for as long as I breathe. What happens next is beyond my control. I trust the women who wait on me will honor my wishes. Only 2 weeks ago, I was able to cast the pain aside and demand my wardrobe mistress clothe me in a fine linen dress and put a ruff round my neck. Enduring the discomfort of hoop and bustle, my face was covered in a thick layer of white lead makeup to cover the pox I was left when I caught smallpox as a young queen. The daubing of my wrists in sweet perfume made me feel almost human. Now sunken in cushions, the chime of bells reaches across our fading fields. I catch the tail end of whispers, infuriated at not being able to hear precisely what's being said. I can no longer demand they tell me or suffer the consequences. The nightmare of that fortress rising above me is upon me again. At the time, the sight of the royal prison almost unhinged me, but a mistress of deception must survive such trials. My elder sister Mary was ruling the country with a rod of iron, and the stakes were kept busy dealing with dissenters. To be so fierce in her beliefs may have been my sister's undoing. When I first became queen, I refused to make windows into men's souls. So long as people conformed to the Anglican religion carved out by my father, they had no need to fear. Yet in your reign, you've ordered more deaths than your sister. Your hour approaches. The very mention of the tower would make the most hardened traitor's bowels shrivel, especially with the threat of torture. As a member of royalty, I would not have to suffer the horrors of Wyatt and his supporters when their rebellion failed. Although I distanced myself from all plots to overthrow my sister, every failure put me in peril. With rumors and counter-rumors circulating of my complicity, I daily faced the threat of destruction. I vividly remember that journey to the tower, passing scenes of horror and desolation. Heads and body parts mounted on spikes at the city's gates displayed the consequence of treason. As we approached, I heard the blood-curdling roar of its lions and turned feverish. To be revisiting the place where my mother had spent her last days, and to have to endure interrogation, seemed beyond me. But I kept my resolve. Any consolation in being given pleasant rooms was short-lived when I discovered the only means of stretching my legs meant having to pass the site of my mother's scaffold. If it came to it, I'd planned on asking for a French sword rather than the cumbersome axe. My mother had made exactly that request before her execution, and then had to suffer the agonies of waiting for my father to grant her wish. Much later, I learnt there was talk of sparing her and allowing her to flee to a nunnery. When the king's love turned sour, he had punished her failure to produce a male heir by getting Cromwell, his clever and formidable politician, to accuse her of numerous acts of treason. They included witchcraft and adultery, including with her own brother. No woman's name was more besmirched. She had been called the king's whore before he made her queen. But she met her death with dignity, making a wise speech to the gathered crowd. In a stroke, she was dead, but not dishonored. I gleaned the details of my mother's final days, long after her death. I dimly recall seeing her as a child. I did not live with her, and when her deliveries of lovely clothes dried up, I sensed something was wrong. In the flickering candlelight, they have coaxed me to bed, where the dark night hovers waiting for my soul. I've always been surrounded by people wanting something. The country's most senior men wait here, watchdogs to a diminishing power. Even a queen cannot hold back death forever. The hour approaches. My physician presses my wrist and clears his throat. Your Majesty, there's the matter of the post-mortem? No cutting, but with great humility. It can be helpful to know the cause of illness for future understanding and inquiries. No, and, the issue of embalming? No, it is usual practice with royalty. No, of course, Your Majesty. His shoulders slump. He will have nothing interesting to report for posterity. The Archbishop arrives carrying oils. Must speak alone. My voice cracks. Everyone to go. In the silence, the Archbishop reaches for my hand. I dreamed of Mary again, I whisper. Which one? Your sister? Or the other one? My cousin. She was the Queen of Scotland. I should never have signed the death warrant. I didn't mean it to be sent. It had to be, Your Majesty. She was complicit in the Babington plot. I tell you, my hand was forced. It was unseemly. I fear God will judge me harshly. Yet, while your cousin lived, you were in constant danger. She was your ultimate rival. But then the manner of her death. Arg. She was not felled straight away. I heard her dawn, ran out from under her dress, howling. And then they dipped his nose into her blood. Bitter tears form runnels in my makeup. To go the grave with such thoughts is abominable. What is done cannot be undone, Your Grace. But will I be pardoned for my sins? You will be pardoned and treated as a queen in heaven, as you are on earth. But his voice lacks conviction. Have you thought any more about the most pressing matter? The kiss of his lips to my hand is like the flutter of a bee's wings over a honey pot. They need to know. Who will it be? A vacant tear falls onto the pillow. I have no heirs, so it will have to be Mary's son, James. But I'm damned if they're getting it out of me till I'm ready. They plagued me to marry and produce an heir, although no man ever pleased them. I played along with their schemes, kept them dangling while they sought out the best alliances. My maids were bribed to report the regularity of my monthly bleeds, but in the end, nothing could induce me. When it came to it, I couldn't allow a man to rule over me. Not even Dudley, who I almost loved, at least until our ardors dampened to the warmth of friendship. But how could I forget what happened to my mother when she married my father? And his love turned to hate. Or how my sister's husband deserted her and returned to Spain, leaving her bereft and childless. I played all proposed alliances off against one another, secretly resolved to remain single. No matter that the cushions have been removed, I request the assistance of my ladies to help me out of bed so I can see the tennis court from the window. I remember Dudley, long gone, playing hopelessly to amuse me. He was, however, a fine horseman, and we spent hours riding together. The only time I felt truly free. My chief counselor strides over, touches my shoulder. Your Majesty must go to bed. A knight and leader of the Privy Council he may be, but I will not abide such insolence from a whippersnapper. Little man, you do not use the word must to princes. Your father would not have spoken so. The truth is as bitter as gall. Knowing I must soon leave this life makes him presumptuous. England will have but one queen and no master. The roar of the lion is in my ears. At my coronation, I wore my mother's crown. It fitted me well, lying in bed, strangled by unspoken words. Their waxen faces loom, pressing for the name of my successor. Will it be James of Scotland, Your Grace? My mind flips back, and I'm riding in the barge along the Thames, heading towards the tower again. I keep telling myself I'm a passenger, not a prisoner, but my body has swollen. After my sister, I am the rightful heir to England's throne. My father restored my legitimacy at a grand ceremony in 1544. These men cannot get the better of me. I'm a queen in waiting, popular with the people. I cannot be harmed. Sickened by the boat's motion, I cry out, "Let us pull over so I may recover." The warehouses line the north bank, rising up like monsters from the deep. I've slept in many beds during my life's course, often with maids, occasionally alone, never with a man, though a number tried. The one here is appropriately boat-shaped and sumptuously draped with sea green curtains, composed of flesh, blood, and mottled bruises. I will the lungs beneath my chest to keep breathing. In and out, in and out. Mere mortal that I am. Your procrastinating must end. The hour fast approaches. Jay. The name sticks like a craw in my throat. Did you hear that? The Archbishop asks breathlessly. She can't speak. In air now grown fetid, my finger draws a circle. She's making the shape of a crown. My lady of the bedchamber understands, as does Kat, my old governess, returned to help me in my final trial. Is it to be James, the King of Scotland? Cecil's voice, low and urgent, breaks through the gloom. She's nodding consent, the Archbishop says. She keeps fiddling with the locket. What's in it? Leave it. Kat covers my hand. No man dare argue. In such moments, women protect their own. The ring has 6 rubies, and the letters E and R. The letter E has diamonds set over it, and the R is enameled in blue. But the ring bears a secret. Within the hinged head lie 2 miniature portraits, one of myself and another of an unnamed woman wearing a French hood. I imagine their gasps on opening it. She bears the look of... Kat will likely puff out her chest and tell them there was never any doubt she was her father's daughter. You only had to look at her. But God bless her, she was her mother's daughter too. Lingering on the threshold, my soul must finally meet its maker. I hear Kat's voice, loud and clear. Open the windows so the queen can smell the fresh cut grass. It's being pecked at by a rook. No more prevarication. My hour has come. Out for the count. A knock, knock, knock came from the top of his coffin lid. Eckhard Freud closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. One day's sleep was all he wanted. One day of peace. That damn boy would jump at the shadows of his own bat wings. Eck pushed up his coffin and glared at the boy, not even deigning to sit upright. He kept his arms crossed over his chest. Yes, Dunstan. What is it? Dunstan Greaves stood there in his PJs, holding a blanket. He shifted from one foot to the other, looking awkward. I heard a noise. Eck's eyebrows rose. He tried to keep his voice even. A noise? You woke me, Count Freud, from his slumber for a noise? Well, what kind of a noise was it? A vampire hunter coming to stake me. The village populace come to burn me. What? Dunstan looked at his feet. He prodded the floor with his toes. Well, no. It was a different kind of sound. A spooky sound. A spooky sound. A spooky Eck sat up. You're an undead creature of the night, Dunstan. You're over 300 years old, and I turned you when you were 24. You can't be afraid of every creak and groan in this old manor. And most importantly, you can't be waking me whilst I'm getting my sleep. Dunstan sagged. He looked miserable. "Kay, sorry." Echehard likewise deflated. Who could say no to those hypnotic eyes? They made him feel like a monster. "Tell me, Dunstan, what can I do to make you feel better?" Dunstan brightened a little. "Well, I guess, maybe, I could sleep in with you today, Eck?" He paused before hurrying on. "Just for today, I promise I'll sleep in my own coffin tomorrow." Echehard closed his eyes. "Beelzebub, give him strength." "Fine, fine. But just for today, I swear to the old ones that this is the last time." Though the boy started to scramble in. "Oh, thanks a lot, Eck. It makes me just feel safer, you know? I can sleep soundly, knowing you're there to protect me." Eck scooched over to the far side of the coffin. The casket maker hadn't constructed it with two bodies in mind. All right. But don't hog all the duvet. You've got your own blanket there. And leave me some of the pillow, damn it." The boy snuggled down. His breathing slowed. "Thanks, Eck. You're the best." "G'day, buddy." Echehard's grumpy exterior melted a tiny bit. He grumbled. "Well, it's all right. Good day, Dunstan." Dunstan jumped, propping himself up on his elbows. "Did you hear that?" Echehard groaned. One day, one single day, that was all he asked for. "Sleep," he groaned. "Let me sleep." Dunstan remained half upright, listening. He raised a finger in the twilight of the closed coffin. A heavy thud and scrape came from beyond the casket's walls, as if on cue. "That," Echehard frowned. He blinked away the sleep in his eyes. Yes, he had heard that. A bat of worry fluttered its wings in the dusty corridors of his ancient heart. Could Dunstan's paranoia be hitting the stake on the head for once? "What? Was it? I don't know. Eck, I think it's what I heard earlier. There's somebody else in the house. There's something in here with us." That woke him up faster than a snort of garlic. Could it be vampire hunters? He thought all the hunters had gone extinct and passed from reality into folklore and legend. He didn't believe any existed anymore. But if they did, he ought to do something. He stirred, starting to sit upright. All right, he said, running a hand over his face. You wait here, boy. I'll check it out. If there's trouble, fly away. Be careful, Ek. Ekahard pushed open the coffin lid. He slipped like liquid through the gap, letting it close without a sound, sealing the boy safe inside. Outside, in the dark, thanks to those fancy blackout blinds, Ek's senses adjusted to the house. He sniffed the room, eyes glinting like a cat's. He attuned himself to the very particles of air as they floated around him. Something shifted down the corridor. A faint blue glow throbbed. A thud, a scrape, and a moan whispered along the floorboards. Ek's teeth extended, and his sharpened nails itched for a fight. Well, bathe him in holy water. Dunstan was right. Could you say the boy was crying wolf when against all odds there was one? Sometimes the boy had unfounded fears, but this time his intuition had proved to be an ally. Ek owed him an apology if he lived to see the moon's light again. Lighter than the motes of dust drifting in the gloom, he stalked towards the disturbance. A man was standing in the grand foyer, his back turned. He had an eerie, ethereal shine and swayed from side to side. His ripped shirt dangled from him in tatters. He appeared to be speaking to someone. A human? Foolish, foolish. Ekahard pounced. The man's body offered no resistance, and Ek passed through him as though he weren't there. Cold electricity crackled over Ek's skin as he pierced the stranger's form. Ek thudded into the wall, head spinning, bewildered. He looked up at his failed would-be victim, bats fluttering in his vision. The misty surface of the man's skin strobed in the gloaming. He looked down upon Ekahard, eyes furious, face drawn in a rictus of mourning. One side of his neck was a gaping black hole from which ink-black blood had gushed and stained both skin and cloth. He raised a hand and pointed at Ekahard, wailing, "Uh-oh." Ekahard had killed this fellow the other night. He'd brought him back to their place as a late-night snack. It wasn't good for his digestion, but sometimes you had to indulge. Other ghosts apparated on either side, like unwhacked whack-a-moles. "I am Shane Abbott," moaned the ghost, "and you have wrongfully killed me. I have woken the others too." There were many. Other voices joined in a choir of the dead. Oh, so many. Oh, sweet Je. Ah, oh, sweet Nosferatu. Wasn't that a kick in the blood-sucking teeth? The only way to get rid of ghosts was with an exorcism. And the only way to have an exorcism was with a priest. What vampire in their right mind would invite a priest into their home? They could spritz you with holy water or brandish a crucifix at you. And if the holy man did get rid of the hauntings, what then? They'd bless the place, Dunstan's voice called out from the other room. "Eck? Everything all right?" "Dunstan, my boy," said Eck, not breaking eye contact with the head ghost. "I don't want to sound all aflutter, but I have bitten off more than I can suck here. We ought to contact the council. We need to vamp hire outside help. Call of the Merrow." Having loaded ice chests full of freshly caught crab into the back of his muddy 4x4, secured his 16-foot red and white Orkney strikeliner to the trailer attached to the vehicle, and returned to the pier to retrieve the nylon mesh crab pots left behind, Miles Burke caught sight of something bobbing in the water, an object he hadn't noticed there before. He recognized it at once as an old-style lobster pot, its slats covered in thick brown seaweed, its netting encrusted with barnacles. Mud and silt clung to its frame, and plant matter dangled from its corners, as though it had been buried at the bottom of the creek for decades. He was confused at first about where it could have come from, but then remembered the trouble he'd had hauling up the last of his pots. It had gotten snagged on something at the bottom of the creek, and he'd struggled to yank it loose. Maybe this Pirates of the Caribbean type relic had come loose too, then drifted ashore in the wake of his boat's churning engine. Whatever the case, he shrugged it off as insignificant following his initial fascination and busied himself stowing the rest of his gear. Someone else could discover it, a local fisherman or curious child. It would make their day and give them something to talk about in this sleepy, coastal town. His eyes kept flicking to it as he worked, however, a curiosity growing that couldn't be quelled. It was probably nothing, but if the cage was as old as it looked, it could be of value. This notion nagged at him, so after depositing his cleaned and empty crab pots in the belly of the boat, he returned with a long-handled ice hook and used it to fish the cage out of the foam. It was cold and wet, slimy to the touch, but that didn't bother him. Hitching the hook to his belt, he turned the cage this way and that, confirming it was vintage, made of wooden slats, rope netting, and leather hinges. He identified the location of its circular trapdoor, but was unable to access it due to the dense accumulation of muck clogging it up. Now it was in his hands. He decided it couldn't be as ancient as he'd thought. The wood didn't smell or feel rotten. It had clearly been in the water a long time, and there was something inside. He could hear it slosh about when he shook it, but he couldn't find a chink in its algae armor to see what. Curiosity mounting, he held the cage tight against his chest and plunged the fingers of his free hand into the kelp. The fronds felt rubbery, springy, and refused to come away, instead seeming to hug the pot tighter. After a few moments, Miles became frustrated and glared at the brown stuff in annoyance. This was not how seaweed worked. The seagulls overhead seemed to agree. Circling restlessly, their shrill cries grew louder, more obnoxious, as though urging him to get the cage open and reveal its contents, or abandon it and leave it where it belonged. He winced beneath their barks, resisting the urge to tell them to shut up. Voices reached his ears, and he turned to see a pair of wizened old fogies in tweed flat caps and woolen jumpers making their way down towards the pier. He wasn't in the mood for small talk, so he hurried to the Land Rover, returning the ice hook to the boat as he passed. The cage was his now, as was whatever was within, and he didn't want to explain himself to locals. Placing the cage like a slumbering infant on the newspaper that occupied the passenger seat, he pulled his door shut and started the engine. Out of habit, he tapped the screen of his phone, which was clutched in the arms of a holder secured to the windscreen. 6 missed calls, 6 more on top of the 5 that morning. He didn't have to check to know they were from his wife, his father, his solicitor, all wanting to know where he was, what he was doing, when he was coming back to the circus his life had become. He'd come to Doonbeg to escape it, for one last indulgence of his favorite pastime before the strike liner. His pride and joy was taken away. One weekend on the water, fishing and hauling up crab. That's all he wanted. A chance to be free before it all fell apart. The noose had been tightening for weeks, finally forcing him to come clean to Kiara about the failed real estate projects he'd been hiding. The multiple mortgages, the unpaid contractors, the suing investors, forced him to admit it all in shame. The coastal resort he poured everything into, the one he thought would save his business, had collapsed before it could break ground. He'd stretched too far, betting that demand for luxury condos would return. It hadn't, and now, with every call he ignored, the threats were growing. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, fraud investigations, failure, exposure, humiliation. Tomorrow he'd return his attention to his woes and decide what he was going to do. Tomorrow, or the day after, or maybe the one after that. It wasn't like he had options. He was facing criminal charges and the repossession of his home and belongings. He had no control over any of it. The only thing he had any say left in was his marriage, and even that was slipping further away with each unanswered call. He had no idea what he wanted to do, fight for the love of his life or let her go. He did know one thing: Kiara did not deserve this. She was innocent. She shouldn't have to go down with his ship or be expected to support a man who cheated and lied. A loser, an idiot, an asshole. The last 3 calls had been from her, and she'd now sent 15 texts. He couldn't bring himself to read them, so he swiped the notification screen away, put the car into gear, and started driving. He waved as he passed the old men, a polite gesture, but they only glared, his clean-shaven jaw and sanitized looks marking him an outsider, not someone they needed to acknowledge. Or maybe it wasn't that. Because country folk were generally friendly. Maybe it's that they somehow knew what he'd taken, something from the creek that wasn't his. He shook his head at the guilt creeping over his shoulders, insinuating he was doing something wrong. It didn't make sense, but every glance at the cage deepened the unease in his gut. There was something about it that put him on edge, made him feel that it wasn't his to take, and it filled him with a familiar kind of excitement. "It's just junk," he said aloud, though he couldn't stop thinking about how the seaweed wouldn't come away from the slats and how something mysterious lay within, which was most likely sludge but might be treasure, something that would help with the mess he was in, something that might help Sierra. Driving away from the inlet, following the cliffs towards Domore and the quiet B&B he'd booked into, he busied himself with fanciful musings of what kind of treasure the cage might hold. The undulating sea dominating the horizon to his right, gently rising slopes carpeted by fields of purple orchids on his left. It was a magnificent day, all azure skies, cotton wool clouds, and the scent of salty sea spray in the air. He couldn't have asked for more. It was exactly the calm he needed before the storm clouds over his life unleashed their fury. The drive to Ayrton House took 20 minutes, and soon he was maneuvering his vehicle, boat and all, onto the gravel-covered parking lot at the side of the stone-clad building. He was the only guest that weekend, so space for his car and trailer wasn't a problem. He took his phone, the harbinger of inescapable doom, and climbed out, swinging around to the passenger side to reclaim the cage. He took time to wrap it in paper so it wouldn't make a mess when he went in, then crunched across the gravel to the door. He was eager to attack it with his knife, cut away the seaweed, and get inside, so he was hoping not to bump into the proprietor. a lovely old dear named Mary Shaw, who could talk like there would never be a tomorrow. He wasn't lucky. "Ah, there you are," Mary said, shuffling from the dining room as he entered the hall, a bright smile on rosy cheeks, dead carnations clutched in pudgy hands. "Nice day for it. Catch anything interesting?" "Not really. I was only after crab today. You can have some if you like. I'm only going to drop it at the market." He kept moving, casting her the briefest of smiles as he made his way to the stairs and started up. "That would be lovely. My Trevor used to catch crab every weekend before he fecked off to Australia with that floozy. I was telling you about her, wasn't I? Her and her 10 ex-boyfriends, and my Trevor to be number 11 because he couldn't resist her charms. What's that you have there?" He was on the 5th step when she spotted it, and he checked to make sure he hadn't dripped dirt on her carpet. "Just an old lobster pot. Found it at the pier. It's ancient, but might be worth something if I clean it up. People will buy anything these days." "Dunmore Pier?" Mary suddenly looked troubled, and the smile had fallen from her lips. "What do you mean, found it?" "Just what I said," Miles replied, caught off guard by her change in demeanor and questions. "I think it was buried in the creek. I must have dislodged it." At the foot of the stairs, Mary creased her brow. "That might not be good, Mr. Burke. There's terrible legends associated with that place. A lot of people have been drawn to their deaths there over the years. It's a dangerous place. Haunted, some say. Or worse." "Worse?" "I don't like to talk about it. Gives me the heebie-jeebies, and it sounds ridiculous. Don't laugh now, but some say the bay is cursed. Some say it's home to the Kumara, the Hound of the Sea, the Merrow." "The Merrow?" Miles shook his head to indicate he'd never heard of such a thing, then resumed his climb to the landing. "Merman," Mrs. Shaw elaborated, eyes wide under a mop of gray curls as she started after him. "You know, like a mermaid, but a man. I know it sounds ridiculous, but some believe it. There are stories of it making off with the souls of the tormented who drowned or jumped from the cliff. They say it keeps their spirits locked in cages, which it hoards like jewels at the bottom of the bay." Her wide eyes were locked on the paper-wrapped cage, one hand on the banister as she climbed, the other crushing the stems of dead flowers. "That's a new one," Miles chuckled, reaching the top of the stairs. "Never knew we were supposed to have mermaids in Ireland, along with banshees and leprechauns. We've some amount of fairy tales, don't we? Don't get me wrong, Mr. Burke. I'm not a believer in such things." She'd stopped halfway up to catch her breath, but continued to stare as he crossed to his bedroom door. "But at the same time, you can't be sure, can you?" "You can't," Miles said, fishing in a pocket for his key. "That could be one of them. A soul cage, one of the Kumaras." "Hardly," he scoffed, guiding the key into the keyhole. He could hear her coming up the stairs again behind him, feel her eyes boring into his skull. "But it's a great story, and it might help sell the thing, if it doesn't fall apart when I take off the kelp." The key turned, the lock disengaged. He opened the door. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Burke. If the legends are true, it's troubled souls the Kumara craves, wayward souls trying to escape." "Sorry, Mrs. Shaw. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to grab a shower and take a nap. I might stay another night. I'll let you know this evening." "Oh, and I'll bring you that crab. Hopefully it's as good as what Trevor used to catch." "I'd put that back," Mary went on as he shut the door. "Back where you found it, if you know what's good for you." "Fuck's sake," he muttered under his breath as the door clicked shut, then rested against it and braced for more. When he heard her slippered feet slogging back down the stairs, he relaxed, placing the mucky cage on his bed and spreading out the newspaper beneath it. Jesus, mermen and soul cages. I've heard it all now. Better not be a box of bloody souls. I need something good. His heart was pounding, and he had that feeling again, that nervous exhilaration he got when doing something he shouldn't. He still couldn't explain why he felt it. He wasn't gambling with his and Ciara's future, wasn't siphoning non-existent funds from account to account or cooking books. He was just messing with some shit he'd found in the surf. It was no big deal, at all. But he still felt the need to take the edge off, so he went to his suitcase for the small paper package containing a Ziploc bag of white powder, a well-used 50-euro note, and half an old credit card, then spent the next few minutes at the dresser sorting it out. Once satisfied, and having wiped some residue from his nose, he took the Swiss Army knife Ciara had given him for Christmas from a cargo pants pocket and prized out its largest blade. For the man who has everything, he recalled her saying, and tears welled unbidden in his eyes. He'd had everything and never deserved it, never deserved her. He couldn't redeem himself now, even if the cage contained diamonds. But if he could make things right for her, that would give these last squandered years of his life some kind of meaning. And so, with a sharp inhalation, he knelt at the foot of the bed and started to saw. Almost immediately, he noticed it wasn't working. No matter how much he slashed, the seaweed refused to come away. He could see the blade slicing through fronds, watched them sever with his own eyes, but the slimy substance clung to the cage and refused to tear free. What the hell? He went at it harder, tightening his grip on the knife, jabbing its blade into the gelatinous sludge, stabbing, carving. What is this? And then the blade got jammed, and the knife's handle jerked out of his hand. Damn it, he said, wiping a sweaty palm on his muddy pants before reaching to take back the knife, only to see it get sucked into the seaweed and disappear. What? It was sudden and noiseless, a subtle, casual motion. It seemed almost normal. Miles moved his face closer, squinted to peer through the mulch, couldn't see in. You're having a laugh. He sighed and poked his fingers into the mush where the knife disappeared. He couldn't feel it. He wriggled his fingers in further. The seaweed seemed to loosen around his hand. He twisted his wrist, and his fingers and thumb slipped inside. The seaweed seemed to shrivel up and tighten. His fingers got a hold of something solid. Then something solid got a hold of him, clamping around his hand and squeezing tight. Miles Burke. A voice seemed to issue from within. Ah! Miles cried, hugging the cage to his chest and hopping to his feet. The thing on the inside pulled, and his hand slipped in up to the wrist. Miles Burke. Jesus. A strange sensation, like aggressive pins and needles, swept through him, starting in his hand and spreading fast, up into his arm, shoulder, face. Get off. He maneuvered the cage with the arm it was stuck on, held it against his side with the other. He pulled, he tugged, he staggered around the room as he struggled, yelled and pitched forward when he felt something bite. He crashed into a wall, lifted his head, let his tariffed gaze peer into a mirror. The face staring back wasn't his. Fear gripped his chest and he screamed, falling away from the monstrous visage, all doughy, gray flesh, mossy green hair, pig-like eyes, and moldy teeth. Give it to me. Miles could have sworn he heard it say, before he tripped and fell back, cracking his head on the corner of the dresser and coming to rest on the floor. He dreamt then, a dream like no other, a strange collection of images and sounds that made no sense, of him lying motionless on the ground, blood painting a pool around his head, of Mary Shaw entering the room, of policemen covering him with a sheet and collecting powdery evidence, of Mary driving, walking, standing at the edge of the bay, whispering into the cage, saying, "I warned you." Your tortured soul called out, and the Merrow called back. Of the cage being cast into the sea, of the dark, murky depths of a jet-black ocean, of the pig-eyed Kumara slithering from the depths to claim its prize, its cage now home to a fresh soul gleaming with torment, a treasure to be savored for eternity. The spook who sleuths my office was darker than FDR's fireside chats and twice as smoky. That's how I like it. Keeps the clients on their toes and the spirits at bay. Name's Roxy Hart, and I'm what you might call a supernatural tomfoolery private dick. Some folks get their knickers in a twist over that last word, but in my line of work, you gotta call a spade and a detective a dick. I kicked back in my chair, feet up on the desk, pondering life's great mysteries. Like why dames always fall for the wrong guy, or how spam manages to be both a wartime delicacy and the bane of future generations' inboxes. That's when she walked in, a real looker, the kind that'd make Betty Grable green with envy. "Are you the paranormal investigator?" she asked, her voice shakier than a GI on his first day in boot camp. I tipped my fedora back, giving her the once-over. "That's what it says on the door, dollface. What's your tale of woe?" She was a maid, worked up at the Wackerman estate. Seems the big cheese, Cornelius Wackerman III, had kicked the bucket under some hinky circumstances. As she spilled the beans, I reached into my trench coat, pulling out the ectoplasmic resonance detector, a contraption that looked like it fell off the set of Metropolis and got jiggy with a transistor radio. "Whoa, Nellie," I said, as the ERD lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. "You've got more paranormal residual energy floating around you than a seance during a full moon. I'll take the case, toots." The maid blinked, more confused than a coal miner at a debutante ball. I'm sorry. What did you just say?" I sighed. Nobody appreciates the classics anymore. I said I'll investigate. Now, scram, sister. I've got work to do. As she hightailed it out of here, I gathered my gear and weapon of choice. The spectral spook zapper, patent pending. I slid it into my left inside coat pocket, right next to the lucky rabbit's foot I'd lifted off a less than lucky leprechaun way back in '47. I adjusted my tie, straightened my hat, and headed out to face the music. The Wackerman estate loomed ahead like the devil's own summer cottage. As I approached, a chill ran down my spine, colder than a G-man's stare. This joint was surely more haunted than my high school reputation after that unfortunate incident with the principal's toupee and a jar of molasses. The door creaked open before I could knock, revealing a butler so stiff he made Buster Keaton look like a Lindy Hopper. "Look it up." "You must be the investigator," he said, eyeing my trench coat like it might bite him. "That's right, Jeeves. I'm here to solve your spectral shenanigans. Now, where's the grieving widow? I need to pick her brain like it's the last rationed can of beans." He led me to a parlor where a dame sat, draped in black like she was auditioning for a walking shadow puppet show. The widow Wackerman, I presumed. Next to her stood a gardener who fidgeted more than a pickpocket at a cop convention. "Ma'am," I said, tipping my hat, "I'm here to get to the bottom of your husband's untimely departure from this mortal coil." The widow's eyes narrowed. I beg your pardon. Are you quite all right, Miss Hart, Roxy Hart, and I'm as right as rain on a duck's back, sugar. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. What's the skinny on old Cornelius's last night on Earth? Before she could answer, a vase floated by, casual as you please. As the vase left the room under its own power, the gardener yelped like he'd just seen Rita Hayworth in the flesh. I smirked, reaching into my coat. Well. Looks like this shindig's about to get interesting. Hold on to your Homburgs and pillbox hats, ladies and gents. Roxy Hart's on the case, and we're gonna paint the town red, or maybe ectoplasm green. From the parlor, I drifted down the hall into the dead guy's study. My gumshoes quieter than a Nazi spy in an Allied command post. The room, swankier than a Hollywood big shot's ego, held more books than the Library of Congress after a shopping spree. All right, let's see what my little friends have to say about this joint, I said, muttering and whipping out the ethereal essence evaluator. It looked like a love child between a Geiger counter and a waffle iron, but it could sniff out evil spirits faster than a bloodhound on a catnip bender. The EEE started clicking like a tap-dancing telegram operator. Well, I drawled. Looks like old Corny was into some hinky business. More nefarious vitality here than a ghost's laundromat. As I poked around, the widow Wackerman slunk in, looking like she'd just lost a staring contest with Medusa. Have you found anything, Miss Hart? I targeted her with a look that could strip paint. Listen, sugar, I'm gonna level with you. Your hubby was dabbling in some dark arts darker than a black market coffee bean. Care to spill the giggle water on that? She blinked like a burlesque dancer under a spotlight. I'm not sure I understand your vernacular, Miss Hart. Are you implying Cornelius was involved in the occult? Bingo, doll face. Give the lady a cigar and a one-way ticket to the Copacabana. I paused, cocking an ear. Did you hear that? A low moan shimmied through the room and steadily grew louder than a foghorn with indigestion. Suddenly, a book flew off the shelf, missing my noggin by a hair's breadth. Duck and cover, sister, I yelled, shoving the widow behind an overstuffed armchair. I whipped out my spectral spook zapper. All right, you ectoplasmic mook, let's dance. The room erupted into more chaos than a Keystone Cop's reel. Books flew, curtains flapped, and somewhere a ghostly voice belted out a tune that'd make Stephen Foster, look it up, roll in his grave. I blasted left and right, my zapper illuminating the place like the searchlights at Alcatraz during a prison break. Take that, you translucent troublemaker, I hollered, nailing a particularly nasty wraith. It vanished with a pop, a whimper, and a puff of green smoke, leaving behind a stink that reeked like burned toast and regret. As the dust settled, I turned to the widow, who was peeking out from behind the chair like a groundhog with stage fright. Your house has more spirits than a speakeasy on Saturday night, Mrs. W. You mind telling me what your husband was up to? She flapped her gums faster than a gossip columnist with a spicy scoop. Turns out, Cornelius had been trying to summon some big bad from the great beyond, looking to strike a deal for power and wealth. Classic mistake. You'd think these rich types would learn, but they always want more. I needed more hot poop, so I cornered the butler in the kitchen. He was stiffer than a starched collar in January, but I could see the sweat beading on his upper lip. All right, Jeeves, I said, leaning in close. Time to sing like a canary at the Met. What do you know about the boss's late-night activities? He gulped, his Adam's apple doing the jitterbug. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Miss Hart. I smiled, all teeth and moxie. Come off it, buddy. I've seen more convincing acts in a high school production of Hamlet. Spill it, or I'll have my friend here do some redecorating. I patted my zapper meaningfully. The butler's resolve crumbled faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. He babbled about secret meetings, strange chants, and a final ritual that went sideways. Corny had bitten off more than he could chew, and whatever he summoned had bitten back. Armed with this info, I headed to the basement. If this was a horror movie, the audience would be screaming at me not to go down those stairs. But hey, a dame's gotta do what a dame's gotta do. The basement was darker than a Mickey Finn's intentions, and twice as disorienting. My ectoplasmic resonance detector was going haywire, its needles spinning like a drunken ballerina. Come out, wherever you are," I called, voice echoing in the gloom. "Let's have a little chat, mono a monster." That's when it appeared. A shape darker than a moonless night, with more tentacles than an octopus family reunion. It roared, a sound that'd make Sinatra lose his voice in envy. I stumbled back, fumbling for my zapper. "Well, ain't you uglier than a bulldog chewing a wasp? Let's see how you like a taste of Roxy Hart's special sauce." I fired, the zapper's beam flooding the underground hideaway with more light than a night raid over Berlin. The creature howled, tentacles flailing. For a moment, I thought I had it on the ropes, but one of those slimy appendages knocked the zapper from my hand, sending it skittering across the floor. The monster loomed over me, its maw gaping like the entrance to the underworld's least welcoming honky-tonk. I gulped, backing up against the wall. "Well, sweet cheeks," I muttered to myself. "Looks like this might be your last curtain call." But as the saying goes, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. And honey, I was about to belt out an aria that'd knock this palooka's socks off, if it wore any. As the tentacled terror approached, I knew it was time to pull out my ace in the hole. Or should I say, my ace from the hereafter. "All right, you overgrown calamari," I growled. "You want to dance? Let's cut a rug." I closed my eyes, concentrating harder than a code breaker at Bletchley Park. Suddenly, the air around me shimmered and sparked like a Technicolor light show at Emerald City. The monster hesitated, its tentacles freezing mid-flail. If it had eyebrows, they'd have been raised higher than a cat's back at a dog show. "That's right, Buster," I said, smirking, my voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "You're not the only spook in this rowdy scene." My body glowed hotter than the Chicago steel mills working overtime for the war effort. The creature shrieked, sounding like 1,000 nails on a chalkboard orchestra. "What's the matter, ugly? Can't take the heat?" I taunted, floating a few inches off the ground. "Let me introduce myself properly. The name's Roxy Hart, class of 1945, and I don't mean high school, sweetheart." With a gesture that would have made Houdini green with envy, I let fly with a wallop of phantasmal pizzazz that made the basement look like Coney Island brought Times Square to a hot date on a Saturday night. The monster didn't stand a chance. It dissolved faster than a sugar cube in hot coffee, leaving behind nothing but a stench of low tide and broken dreams. As my glow faded away and I floated onto solid ground again, I heard gasps behind me. Turning, I saw the widow, the butler, and the gardener gawking at me like I was Eleanor Roosevelt doing the jitterbug in her studded leather underwear. Now that's a picture. "Close your mouths, folks," I drawled. "You'll catch flies." The widow stepped forward, her eyes wider than dinner plates at the Ritz. "Miss Hart, what? Who are you?" I straightened my fedora, which had somehow stayed on through the whole shebang. Like I said, doll, I'm Roxy Hart, paranormal investigator extraordinaire. I just happen to have a bit more personal experience with the other side than most. You mean, the gardener stammered. A ghost? Well, butter my biscuit and call me impressed, I said, winking. Been haunting this side of the dirt since 1945, when a Jerry and I did the Razor Fandango in Kraut Country, and I missed a step. Figured I'd put my unique secret agent talents to good use, so I started solving cases no living gumshoe could crack. The butler, looking paler than usual, which for him was quite a feat, cleared his throat. But how are you solid and a woman? I shrugged, straightening my trench coat. A dame's gotta have some secrets, Jeeves. Let's just say I've picked up a few tricks since shuffling off this breeding business. Now, about your late boss. I explained how Cornelius had accidentally offed himself during his little summoning ritual. The big bad he'd called up had been more than happy to stick around and make itself at home, feeding off the fear and confusion of the household. So, that's the skinny, I concluded. Case closed, and your house is officially deghouled. My bill will be in the mail, and don't worry, I accept most forms of payment in this realm. As I turned to leave, the widow called out, "Miss Hart, will we see you again?" I paused at the door, tipping my hat with a smirk. Sugar, in my line of work, you never know where or when I might pop up. Just keep your eyes peeled and your Ouija boards handy. With that, I sauntered into the night, my form slowly fading like mist in the morning sun. Another case solved. Another day. Well, not lived, but you get the picture. In this town, the streets are dark, the dames are dangerous, and the dead don't always stay put. But as long as there are phantoms causing trouble, Roxy Hart, the ghostly dick, will be there to crack the case and save the day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a hot date with eternity, and maybe a cold glass of spectral gin. This ghost detective's work is never done. But hey, that's the breaks when you're the Spook Who Sleuths. Phenomenal. I knew the other three who'd come on board, but had never made the formal acquaintance, nor, from what I'd learned, would have cared to. The other guys, no idea. I use guys loosely, without gender assignment, which isn't a horrible thing. People more than ever are just kinda people, despite the plucky can-do dementia of the Proud Boys and Rollers in Florida and guys like my two new friends, who seem to swing dicks with random glee. Today's vast uncertainty liberates me from the subconscious rules of attraction or aggression and the traps and travails that result from getting it wrong or acting on the primordial. Not so much with the other guys. There was no context for humanity, much less the equipment or accoutrement that might tell me who I wouldn't bang with a regulation 10-foot titanium pole or drunkenly flail at outside a sketchy bar at 1 a.m. on the ass end of town. And in fact, that's the last thing my bros were doing before we became fellow contestants in Intergalactic Survivor. Or more literally, ultimate, naked, and afraid. This was what I'd call a Kate McKinnon scenario. All coot-coots and prune shoots, and, in this instance, shriveled roots. Nothing like full disclosure to Dow's male bravado, or, to be frank, and with all due to the fourth member of our little party, to make you reconsider why you considered busting skulls the ideal nightcap. For at least one of the bros, it was karma swooping out of the central Illinois skies with an extraterrestrial roofie. And the night, or morning, I guess, was still young, it would appear. Under abnormally normal conditions, or at least those I'd recorded a dozen times, I'd expected to come out of this with a little invasive poking and prodding, and, if I won the lotto, a blank spot in the tape over the P&P. Unlike my pals, I naturally was more intrigued than terrified. Now, I had a sense I'd have preferred the scheduled entertainment. It looked like something out of a Nickelodeon award show, except unlike Demi Lovato or Derek Jeter, nobody went home with a trophy and green pudding in their coot-coot or prune shoot. All honesty, the mangled thing on the seamless luminescent floor seemed an improvement over the rest of the crew now milling about. Nobody leapt out of the crowd howling at the heavens for their lost comrade. Nobody wrapped tendrils or tentacles or whatever shit around anybody's throats. Dead guy could have been the office douchebag for all I knew, but nobody's metaphorical shorts seemed particularly in a bunch. Why I got chosen, I have no idea. There's nothing about me that projects leader vibes, except maybe the glasses, which would have meant nothing in a galaxy likely minus a lens crafter's or, seemingly, eyes. Maybe I was the only one of the Millington foursome who wasn't projecting pheromones, blood, Jägermeister, and Stetson original flavor. Maybe there was something their species found comfort in the lingering essence of ranch corn nuts. I'd left the fucking bag in the front seat of the Honda in the tractor turnaround 100 feet down the road. The body and all attendant slime had been removed efficiently from the tiny chamber, which from the lights and panels and sensors filling one wall was probably the flight deck, which may have made dead Guy the captain. Made sense, because from the corridor outside, there simply was no entrance, and Captain Demised's residual slime had pooled and congealed where the invisible door had been opened presumably by somebody with the codes or the neural interface or whatever sci-fi horseshit these nerds used. I'd been a true crime podcaster since WMIL had fired me for hiding my stash under the audio board and lifting the gear essential to launching a successful true crime podcast. My host this evening extended a tentacle or tendril, and I tensed as it touched my hand. I momentarily considered that I'd been selected for all the wrong reasons, but then I sensed something like the warm vibration of an electric blanket kicking on, and something in my skull registered it as a reassuring gesture. Nobody's mad. We just want to get to the bottom of things before we rip the flesh from all your bones and cast you still breathing into Jeff and Elon's airless playground. After a moment, the tendricle withdrew, and I sensed a change in the ambient frequency. Broadcaster's ear, some might say, as I loaded up my bobbleheads in WMIL/WILFFM/WCNT's circular drive. The FCC had given up long ago. My senses had only heightened after I swapped the pot for the pod. So, I finally spoke. What do we do here? A ripple in a fold where we normally keep our belly buttons was the only sign it hadn't already moved on to Denny's versus IHOP. Then my hand buzzed, and I felt something like a venti double espresso hitting my brain. I glanced down, and I realized E.T. had plastered some tech on me. Teeny tech, like that thing above Kate Winslet's lip, I couldn't look away from during the entire run of Mayor of Easttown. They probably had better Best Buys in the Andromeda, because as I pondered my hand, it kicked things off. It wasn't a question. No Wookiee purr or calming Christopher Nolan, Jodie Foster Babelfish Siri for dummies. It was a sensation that sparked the right cerebral pathway in the rough form of a question. Hey, don't ask me. Aside from the abduction thing, I got nothing against you guys. I were you, I'd call a staff meeting. This was clearly an inside job. I raised a brow and a tendril twitched. Unless? It responded with an abrupt hum with a rising inflection. I mean, I'm just saying. The hum raised an impatient decibel. I had that effect, and I grinned despite the sketchy circumstances. Let me know if you heard this one. A vampire, a werewolf, and a ghost walk into a bar. I'd never really cared for the paranormal, As a kid, I'd cheated curfew more a few times to catch Art Bell and his syndicated late-night imitators, the original podcasters, you might say. Most all I ever got from it were sleepless nights because I was neither as cynical or worldly as I imagined. And then Stephen Meyer. The notion of seductive heart-of-gold vampires and soulful werewolves who only need an empathetic tummy-adjacent rub was flamin' Doritos for emotionally miswired adolescent girls and the hormone-addled teen wolves and bloodsuckers sidling up for a peek up the skirt. I actually found Mom one day sneaking one of those Twilight cinder blocks over socks and towels, suspiciously leaning into the basement washer. That may well have been my cannabis origin story. The day W.M. Isle and I parted company, our morning zoo boys interviewed some hot university multimedia prof who held that, like opinions and assholes, every moron today has a podcast. Though she told me to fuck off as I stopped to chat on my way out of the building to torture my intern escort, the prof's other words inspired me to take up my own mic, even with the station call letters scratched into it. I had two major obstacles to podcasting fame. Well, two with several bullets. Every asshole with an opinion and an Amazon account indeed had a true crime cast, and many of them didn't have a half-dozen public intoxication pot busts on their sheet while trying to pull intel from the keepers of the sheets. And the local cops turned out to be better at solving midnight murders and geocaching body dumps than I'd assumed. Still, I lucked into a couple of low-life, low-radar prospects with the necessary quotient of lurid stupidity. Stuff that could be dressed up with a little NPR polish and a moody/broody royalty-free score. So help you actually care about folks whose absence might not have registered for a couple weeks, or whose departure might have been a low-grade net positive. I had a cousin in the Millington PD crime lab who cared about such folks even without the synthesized violins, and she tossed me a couple lightly gnawed, long-discarded bones. 5 episodes into Dollar Store Death, I hit connective tissue. 3 months before, Yelene Krautzer, a clerk at the dollar station on Main, had closed up for the night and trudged the brightly lit 3 blocks north to Bar Road, and the moonlit 4 blocks west to the trailer park behind the community college. When Yelene failed to show up for another day of gassing Mylar balloons for backyard birthdays and early releases, and calculating infinite multiples of $1.25, you expect them to change the signage every time the supply chain breaks? Then failed to show 3 more shifts. The manager called the MPD for a welfare check, and the MPD determined Yelene had indeed made it home. Keys on the coffee, Mountain Dew table, screen unlatched with the storm door ajar to loudly let Judge Judy and Kelly Clarkson out, and a single streak of crusted blood on a couch pillow. Blood matched Yelene, but according to Cousin Chris, also contain a second salivary DNA contribution that couldn't yet be traced. I'd seen Krautzer's Facebook wall and found it hard to buy anybody was slobbering over her, and given Yelene's known circle, that she was swapping blood for spit with anyone who didn't have ink or DNA on file with the MPD, the county, or the Pontiac or Joliet men's clubs. There was one more anomaly, as Chris put it. Canine hair on Krautzer's contaminated couch, breed unknown, or more likely a Heinz 57, but nowhere else on the slightly funky premises. The neighbors hadn't noticed any suitors around that or any other night, much less with a voyeuristic black lab mix in tow. But my sense was the ancient and self-medicated of Paradise Park were running on observational fumes. The Dollar Station crew testified Yelene enjoyed a lively sex life, if not precisely in those terms. 2 guys in particular haunted the station, hanging at Krautzer's register for near shifts at a time, creeping the clientele in irritable silence and binging energy drinks and paydays to keep the manager at bay. Jason Truitt looked something like what might happen to a lesser Jonas brother if Proactive ever went belly up and he made his rent under cars at the Lightning Lube a block up. Chad Salem had landed a Suh Wheat gig moving bongs and vape juice at the smoke shop between one of Millington's bustling new dispensaries and the Duncan, which had seen a spike in wholesales and parking lot collisions with the neighborhood cannabis trade. There theoretically might have been one brain and something hinting at a personality between them. Chad showed greater finesse telling me to go fuck myself, but they were working off roughly the same script. And like a lot of Gen Plussers today, romantic rivalry seemingly had not damaged their broship. There was little leverage to get either one on air, and I needed one or the other if I were going to play anybody besides the dollar station's horny off-brand soda vendor as prime suspect. Then, in a flash of inspiration, I visited the Lightning Lube and vape in big red neon, marketing geniuses they were not, for one last pitch. I left with a pair of fuck yous, a half can of Rockstar Pure Zero, and a grease-slick, empty chug of Mountain Dew Ultra Midnight. Cousin Chris accepted my gift with a sigh, and as she added me to the bottom of her to-do list, I took one more peek at the presumed crime scene photos. I'd missed the big black brick next to the trailer keys on the coffee table. As I'd intended, Chad put 2 and 2 in his missing piss drink together, and, I assume, helped Jason with the math as well. I wasn't surprised when I got the call a few days later, but the voice on the other end floored me. I agreed to meet her anyway, thinking maybe I could save the cast even without a body, or more accurately, the absence of one. What could go wrong at midnight at the soccer fields at the edge of town, right? She was waiting in the shelter by the bike trail. No other cars in the lot filled every summer Saturday with type A millennial moms and dads, but her profile was crisp in the single overhead the city'd installed to protect nocturnal joggers from their impulsive cardio. I got a little wary when I realized her rodent features were outlined in blue rather than municipal fluorescent orange, but I continued across the trampled, damp grass. They sacked me halfway across the first field, one from each side. I didn't need Chris to tell me who'd left dog hair on Yelene's house, and as fourth Jonas ripped at me, I felt a sharp stab in the neck, and momentarily caught Chad's bloody grin as he dove back in for a second gulp. I came to face, and yelped like a little girl. The little girl the other little girls are too embarrassed even to beat up at recess. Yelene clearly needed some rare beef and leafy greens. Her narrow face was pallid, juiceless, her eyes dead. Unlike Kristen Stewart, however, the washed-out eyes were somehow also penetrating and expressive, and Yelene was smiling broadly, if in that Anthony Hopkins way right before he dishes you up with beans and cheap wine. And whatever Benicio del Toro, Robert Pattinson STD she caught from the fellas had a miraculous effect on her new, neutral palette complexion, and there was an energy that had to be more than just mainlining Rockstar or Dew. "Someday you'll want to thank me," she whispered in a frosty puff as my nods pulled up somewhere around my kidneys. "I appreciate your kind words, but a simple fuck off is thanks enough." Yelene rose and then shimmered, is the only word I can put to it, and I spotted the guys waiting at the edge of the asphalt. Then she popped back into focus and the former dollar store. Besides, everybody's got a podcast these days, like assholes and, It's okay. She had a few thousand years to work on her metaphors. The musketeers jumped when I entered, probably because I'd never learned to knock first and really didn't need to stand on ceremony anymore. I could feel, if not see the fat and sassy moon beyond the hall in a way I never had, and I was still itching under the hoodie and jeans. "Fuckers letting us go?" the ingloriously naked Serena demanded. Everybody went home for the night. I smiled. Coming in for a landing in a few. Said we could let ourselves out. You think to bring our shit brain? Randy sneered. The poet of the group, and the guy who'd been the prospective star of my next crime cast until fate had intervened likely on Serena and Cody's behalf. Cody poked at a spot to the left of his bristly lips, then did the calculations and shifted to the right. You got a little green shit on your... Oh. Yeah, I sighed. Oh. My favorite John Mulaney routine is the one about the girlfriend who, having seen Ray, declares that she didn't care for the whole dead brother thing. Neither did Ray Charles, Mulaney notes. Science doesn't care how you feel, nor the universe, nor whatever shit's stowed in the drywall in the back of the closet. Still don't care for the paranormal, or the extra normal. We somehow believe aliens are telepathic, cosmically attuned, all-powerful, all-knowing. But once I realized their highfalutin tech didn't come with a polygraph, I knew they put their metaphorical pants on one figurative leg at a time. Just flesh and slime like the rest of us, only better in science and vehicle design and highly susceptible to our special brand of terrestrial batshit. Everybody loves a good scary story with a hook-handed twist, and mine was a great one. After I showed my new BFF my locked room cheat and dealt with the rest of Team Tendril, I requested a ride home and left him or it or them, I'm an ally when I can, with that sage principle of the redneck code. Tell your friends. While he, she, they, it fiddled with the GPS, I bid my bar buds a fond and final adieu, mainly to cleanse the palate. The Honda and the gear and the corn nuts were just where I'd left them. The field behind already had been stripped to stubble and earworms looking for a place to winter. A couple Fords were angled into the front of the double tap, which at the dawn's early light was dispensing biscuits and gravy and therapeutic dog hair to the guys who'd struck out on the bright to suck up the rest of the corn and beans or shoot the shit out of stuff as they wet dreamed of being that first good guy with a gun who doesn't instinctively plug the black cashier. I was surprisingly still hangry, despite my impromptu feast, so I pulled it out of the turnaround and crunched into the gravel across East Millington. I noted for the first time the tap folks had dressed things up for the holiday with one of those 20-foot skeletons decked out in no doubt handmade biker gear. A vampire, a werewolf, and a ghost walk into a bar. Dude, the bartender called after I took a two-top as far from the Morning Fox crew moderating a literal farmer roundtable underneath. You look like death warmed over. Rough night, huh? Probably as good a punchline as I was ever going to come up with. October surprise. Oi Choi, show me your tongue. That's what you got to say to a suspected SERP. They can't hide their forked tongues even if they've gotten better at copying just about everything else. Ask anyone, and they'll tell you. I mean, it was all over the feeds, this little old man. He could have been anybody's grandpa, except he was living under a stolen ID and preying on small critters near a school zone. But luckily, some Final Front guys caught him, and when they backed him into a corner, out came that freaky SERP tongue. And that's just one example. Who knows how many more are living among us? But we're not going to sit idly by and let it happen. Sometimes all it takes is a few good men to make a difference. That's why I answered the private invite on my holo. Want to do something about the SERPs? That flashed once, then gave the when and where before the letters scrambled and dissolved. It was fast, like 3 seconds, probably to test our memories and observational skills. We're meeting at the shuttered Lindbergh Library in a part of Southside Apex that hugs the wall along the stretch, and I get there way before sundown to show them I know how to do recon. I'm wearing my urban camo and blending in with a piece of plasteel that hasn't been added to the wall yet. I I count 4 guys go into the alley behind the library. Not a one sees me, but I'm not following until it's time because I'm precise that way. Oi choy. Some guy I didn't see go in sticks his head out the alleyway. His head is like a crete block with 2 slits, and those slits are looking right at me. I stiffen because maybe he's going to disrespect me and ask to see my tongue, but he just jerks his big head to tell me to get moving. In the alley, he rolls aside a dumpster to reveal a hole. I see his black shirt and the crossed hammers over stars and bars on his forearm. That means he's final front, so I know I can trust him. We walk down to the library basement, where floodlights and empty shelves line the wall. The 4 other guys are down there, plus 2 final front guardsmen and some cyberpunk chick fiddling with a gunmetal box on a fold-out table. When they jam our feeds and make us hand over our hollows, I know this is some alpha code red shit, and we're in it for real. Outstanding. The guy with the big head kicks aside some books that got burned after everyone realized the feeds were better, then stands in front of us. Everyone straightens up without being told. You can call me Sergeant Bill, but don't you dare call me sir, he says, kind of cool and strict at the same time. Now, you may not know us personally, but we know you. Every one of you has been carefully selected, but if you don't agree, if you have any doubts, then there's the door. No? Then let's begin. You men have been selected to infiltrate the SERPs and reveal the enemy within. My heart hammers in my ears, then skips a beat when Sergeant Bill says the mission pays double time with a bonus for each SERP we expose. Wow, Choi. I mean, I'd do it for free because I love Apex City. But the double time pay with bonuses is how I know Chancellor Ike must have our back on this mission. He's generous and understands the working man like that. It's like Chancellor Ike's in this basement with us, but we can't say his name. I mean, we can, but no one does out of respect. He's already doing so much while the Weepsters and SERP deniers attack him from all sides, so we can't say his name without giving him something else to deal with. Now, you might ask yourself, what about training? Sergeant Bill says, there'll be none of that. Training will give you away in this scenario. That makes sense. SERPs are trying to be just like us, so they won't know the difference if we be ourselves. Sergeant Bill continues on and takes the words right out of my mouth. I nod and see others doing the same. We all get it, even though none of us knows each other. I bet Chancellor Ike planned it that way through the final front. He's holding a rally all the way on the other side of Apex tonight. That's smart. Plausible deniability to keep us all safe. I watch the Sarge talk and know we're tuned into the same frequency. Choi's a badass. I bet if the basement ceiling caved in, he'd be able to stop it with his head. He's solid as a post, and I bet he's seen some shit. That makes me feel better about how easily he spotted me outside. I imagine already being out in the field and passing him in the street while I'm undercover. We won't so much as look at each other because we're professionals, but we'll both know that we're part of an unspoken brotherhood. There will be no medals for me because I can't talk about what I do, not even to my wife when I have one. She'll respect that I don't talk. Maybe I'll even meet my future wife on a mission. I glance at the cyberpunk chick still messing with the box on the table. She's actually kind of hot. Then, the basement gets pretty quiet. Sergeant Bill is looking at us like he expects someone to say something. One of the other guys, a redhead with too many freckles, raises his hand. What if the SERPs want us to eat someone's cat, sir? What did you call me? See, Sergeant. Anyone here want to help him out with that question? You eat the damn cat, I say. What did you say? The Sarge gets in my face, but I stare straight ahead and repeat it. Did you hear that? He asks, cat question guy. Then Sarge repeats my words like he's in awe. Even better, he gets all of the other guys to repeat it. Yeah, Joy, I was made for this. Then we get serious. Sergeant Bill says we all gotta make a temporary sacrifice. I guess we all knew it was coming, but it's still hard to hear it. We're all gonna have to get serped tongues before going out into the stretch. Cat question guy looks at me, maybe hoping I'll speak up and give him an excuse to chicken out. Nope, not going to happen. We stand there in silence until the moment's gone. Sarge tells us we'll get out normal tongues back once the mission's done. Then he drops some inside knowledge that we didn't know. The Serps don't talk when they're alone among their own kind because they're not advanced enough to have their own language. They only know how to copy. We trust you, but we can't have you slipping up and talking when you make first contact out in the stretch. For that reason, you're going to have to get your vocal cords paralyzed. Sounds worse than it really is, and it's even more temporary than the tongue mods. No reversal needed. Now, if you go see that lovely lady over there, she'll get you sorted. Any volunteers? I double time it over to the cyberpunk chick because I don't want any of the other guys making a first impression before I do. She's wearing blackout contact lenses, so it's like I'm staring into her soul when she looks up at me. Hey, so it's really simple. You put your face in there. She rotates the gunmetal box my way. The top and side facing me are open, and the inside is white foam with a face-shaped hole. Then you stick your tongue in there. She points to a black hole that lines up with the mouth of the white face hole. There's something down there, something with metal legs. Having second thoughts? It only hurts for a second. It's nothing compared to this. She opens her mouth and shows me her tongue stud. I run my eyes over her metal, leather, and tattoos to let her know fear is the farthest thing from my mind right now. I don't know. Will I still be able to do this? I do the old 3-leaf clover tongue trick and let her get a good look while the other guys line up behind me. I stare into her designer eyes. Someone behind me coughs, but I keep staring until she gives a slow smile. Then I put my face in the box. She puts her hand on the back of my head and strokes my hair. We'll probably tell our kids about this moment. She's right. It's quick, more like a millisecond, an intense burst like a laser slicing my head down the middle. But then it's gone, and whatever's in that hole sprays something icy and soothing into my throat. Her hand stops stroking my hair, and I take my head out of the box. Another, heavier hand lands on my shoulder before I can get her hollow. It's Sergeant Bill, and he's guiding me back up the basement stairs while I blink away the white spots in my vision. "Let's check you out here, soldier," he says, when we're next to the hole that leads back out into the alleyway. It's dark now, so he pulls out a pen light and a hand mirror to give me a look. "Oi choy." I try to say it, but my new tongue just flaps around. That's when I remember about the frozen vocal cords. Sarge plays it cool and gives me a moment to fight down the panic. I take another look. There's not even a speck of blood, and a serp's tongue isn't like a snake's tongue. It's more like two smaller human tongues that can move in different directions. If I hold it still, I can barely tell the difference. Sarge is right. It'll be easy to reverse. I close my mouth and look at him. "Congratulations, you're first out in the field, but we have a special surprise before your stretch deployment. We couldn't tell you until you reach this stage, but you get to meet him. Tonight, Chancellor Ike. He doesn't have to say the name. As he gives me the details of how I'll get to the rally and what happens after, my eyes start to tear up. I clear my throat, but even that doesn't make a sound. "Hey, you know how to use one of these?" Sergeant Bill asks as I'm about to leave. He hands me something that feels light and solid at the same time. That's a ghost gun, undetectable and 3D printed to match the color of your skin. You get just the one shot, but you might need it if things go sideways with the SERPs. Keep it close. All right, soldier, I'll leave you to it. He shakes my hand before going back to the basement. Even if I could talk, I wouldn't have the words. The risk Chancellor Ike is taking for us goes beyond words. He didn't have to, but he did, and he's letting me meet him with a loaded weapon on my person. That's what makes him great. His ability to completely trust someone in a world filled with lies. I take a steadying breath, then remind myself to breathe only through my nose from here on out to keep my SERP tongue hidden. The cruiser is already waiting there in the alley, just like Sergeant Bill said it would be. Nothing fancy, but it hovers smoothly enough over the south side's cracked pavement, then picks up speed on the north side's shiny streets where the Weepster elites live in high-rises and pretend that SERPs aren't flooding our city with sacramine. The driver doesn't say a word or even look at me. He just hands me my rally ticket and lets me off a few blocks from the Apex arena. I show my VIP ticket, and the metal detector is quiet like me as I zip through security. At first, I'm a little paranoid about someone trying to start a conversation with me, but it's easy to just clap, nod, and smile with my mouth closed after Chancellor Ike comes out and starts talking. My seat's in row 9, close enough to the stage that I can hear his voice boom before the speakers farther back in the stadium amplify it. He looks even bigger in real life. He makes this packed stadium feel small. And it's not like I think he's a god. I know he's not perfect, and he'll be the first to say so. But that's why he's our last chance. He's not afraid to say what's on everyone's mind. Then, right in the middle of Chancellor Ike's story about how he made the Weepsters pay their fair share, someone 2 rows ahead of me stands up from his seat. It seems like the wrong time for a standing ovation. Plus, he's facing the wrong way. He climbs on his seat to put himself even higher over the seated crowd. That's when I see it's Cat Question Guy from the basement. One of his eyes is swollen shut, and the other eye is bugging out of his skull, searching the stadium for something behind me. I turn my head to look back and see others doing the same. Chancellor Ike can't help but notice. "Sir? Sir, do you need assistance? Do you need someone to teach you how to sit? This guy. Look at this wacko. Are you lost? Seats are for sitting, sir." Cat Question Guy starts climbing over the other people to get out of his row. People are recording him on their hollows because that's what people do. Idiot. He's going to compromise the mission. "We need some assistance over here." The speakers carry Chancellor Ike's voice across the stadium. Cat Question Guy takes off up the aisle, then runs back toward the stage as security comes down the aisle after him. Oh shit, does Cat Question Guy also have his own ghost gun? Maybe he's a double agent. Maybe the SERPs are smarter than we think. More security is closing in on the stage from both sides, but they'll never get there in time to save Chancellor Ike. I put my hand on the ghost gun in my pocket and get to my feet. But then I see Sergeant Bill at the head of security sprinting down the aisle. "Gun! Gun! He's got a gun!" Sarge draws his own piece without breaking stride and drops Cat Question Guy with a quick burst to the chest. Everyone around me has dropped to the floor with their hollows hanging overhead to still take in the action. I realize I'm still on my feet. Sergeant Bill glances at me. I look away and start sinking to the floor to keep my cover, but something stops me. He's standing at the end of my row, and those slits in that big block of a head are still trained on me. Now, his gun is too. "Check the tongue on the one in the aisle," he says, without taking his eyes off me. I think he was signaling this guy. My hand is still frozen on the ghost gun in my pocket, and my words are frozen in a mouth made to betray me. Sarge plants his feet wide and shows me his teeth. Oi, Choi, let me see that tongue. Venus buried. The girl in the graveyard is your best friend, so you take her home. The night is a bruise between you, a blotch of rogue in the passenger window, the color of fruit left out to fester. The body pries at her seatbelt, a finger, then two. The radio echoes static. The body shuffles in her seat. You study the face, the similar slice of jaw, the nose humped from where a baseball had hit her at 12, just slightly off-center. The skin like a rain-licked plastic bag, the stink of musk and sulfur. You want to look away, but you cannot. She's so beautiful. Even like this. Your headlights rake warbled slits through the dirt road, a yellow like jaundice. Your hands are stiff from the cold, your lips cracked. The girl beside you is dead, and you are bringing her home. 4 days ago, you'd stepped into a hardware store and emerged with a shovel sturdy enough to lift a life on. 4 days, you'd spent digging dirt in your own backyard yard until loam muddied under your fingernails and erratic holes split garden beds like the mouths of greedy beasts, until you could sift through soil with your eyes closed, with a hand bound. 4 nights you had laid in your bed staring at the pockmarked ceiling, wondering what it felt like to burn alive. Now, the shovel beats dull against the skin of your trunk, your hands gripping the steering wheel like a throat you're trying to silence. The body turns, dawn bleaching the salmon gray of her skin. The left eye slips from its socket, and she pushes it back in with the heel of her hand. She smiles, head lolling like a marionette's. Sorry, baby. Her voice comes out strained. I wasn't expecting company. I'm sure you understand. In a sickle of citrus moonlight, Adeline Marcus smiles up at you with shell-pale gums. Adeline Marcus died on the 31st of October and was buried a week later, the date on her gravestone a month shy of her 18th birthday. In the court, the boys would claim it was an accident, that they didn't know she was inside. For better or worse, you believe them. The fingers striking out matchboxes, the beer cans constellating the sidewalk. A prank gone too far. The wrong place, the wrong time. It doesn't have to be on purpose. She didn't have to be home. The coroner ruled it suffocation, but all you can imagine is flame like a stiff palm striking over and over. Adeline had crawled from the mouth of the home on her hands and knees. She was dead by the time she reached the pavement, her Sunday dress singed up to her knees. The dress you knew well enough. Either way, the boys were left with 25 to life, and the Marcuses were left with a dead daughter, a ring of ash like chalk on the pavement. You were left with a misplaced guilt like hunger, a guilt like an Ouroboros, choking on the tail, swallowing the head, eating yourself alive and being unable to stop, even as it consumes you. Because this wasn't the sort of thing that happened to good people. You watch water curl down your shower drain, carrying with it mortuary makeup, kaleidoscopic insects and jasmine bubbles, strings of dirt stretched out like sinew. The body's head rests on her knees, vertebrae needling through her back like a line of molars. The electric lights wash her green, dark veins rooted under brittle skin. She turns her face to the shower head and picks at the powdery sediment under her fingernails. The shower floor is a mess of grit, and you think of a child scooping up the sand. You turn the heat up until it scalds and scrub mildew from the base of the shower door. You think, if you can only get everything clean, everything will be all right. She turns her head and looks at you through eyes obscured by glass paneling. She says, It's not as bad as all that. I don't even think I felt a thing. But she says it through lips the color of spoiled plums, so the sentiment doesn't ring true. You lift threadbare towels from the bottoms of your linen closet. You walk 3 times around your block and return to a corpse sat on your sofa like she has nowhere better to be. There are ants in your sugar bowl. You try to remove them, lift their crystal-knotted bodies on the prong of a fork, but they slip between the gaps, and you are left with a mess bigger than when you started. Tea-brown sludge bleeding from thoraxes and the stink of vinegar. There's a dead girl on your sofa, but let's focus on the ants in your sugar bowl, the way they thread through cysts of white like veins on a leaf, like the capillaries that run through the skin of your face. You make tea anyway. You add too much milk and sit cross-legged in front of the body. She stares at you. You stare back. The two of you drink, and ribbons of watery milk pour clean out her trachea, the gaping hole in her chest. But she doesn't stop drinking until you do. You're not looking at me, she says. Not really. Yes, I am. You twist your hands in the shag carpet. Aren't I now? No, she says. You're not. You leave your teacup on the floor, saucer and iris of yellow, and go upstairs. You take 2 cigarettes from the carton squashed on your father's desk, and then think better of it. Press down with your heel until tobacco dissipates into the tawny carpet. You change your bedsheets twice, eggshell white. No, gray with peonies. You make a second cup of tea. When you get back to the room, the body is still there. You are looking at her. You are not looking at her. Do I disgust you? She says. No. She shakes her head, dark hair plastered to her shoulders like reeds. No more than I always did. You need to sleep, you say. Baby. She tilts her head to one side. Sleeping is all I've ever done. The last time you saw Adeline Marcus alive was in the back of a stranger's car, parked on a stranger street, with the taste of a stranger's tequila fresh between your lips. You were never 2 built for parties, so the outcome was a pair of girls who looked like they were playing dress-up. Blousy dresses with sleeves like a nun's. Thrift store necklaces noosing your necks. Shoplifted lipstick which she hid beneath her mattress. More wax than pigment. But in the citrus peel of streetlights, in the low trill of distant music, the 2 of you looked beautiful. She had her legs curled under her and was sitting sideways in the back seat, her hand resting on your knee and the other palmed against the window. A song on her lips that you couldn't quite place. You were too close, but it was night, and everyone was inside and drunk. And sometimes we all need to feel closer than we should be, to lose ourselves a little. The song melted on her lips, swallowed into the limp press of salvia and booze, and you said something like, I think I should go home now. And she said something like, have another drink. And so you did. You let her pour the liquor into the flimsy mouths of red plastic cups and watched her swallow. She said, you're so pretty. And you said, I think you should stop. And she said, just let me say that one thing. And you wanted to say, stop fucking looking at me like that. And you wanted to say, I want to crawl inside you and make a life for myself in the city of your mind. And you wanted to say, let's just be quiet. Let's just not talk. Let's just not ruin a good thing by telling the truth. Instead, you pushed open the passenger door, stumbled out onto the skin of vein blue sidewalk. I'm going home now. The body lays with her back to your bed, hands worming in the floral sheets, chestnut hair spilling across her throat, past the ballpoint pen-marred bedposts, over the gray skin of her forehead. You are thinking about the silken mouth of a coffin. You are thinking of how she looked when you pulled her from the rose mouth of heaven. The radiator hums. The lace curtain bellies your open window. She rolls over onto her side, slots her hands together like pieces of a decaying jigsaw puzzle. You still can't even look at me. Her mouth moves too slowly, words like chewing gum. Why am I here, Bet? What's it for? There are pink crescent moons on the bed of your palms from the bite of your nails. She pulls her knees to her chest and a bone cracks. She pulls her knees to her chest and a molar tumbles from between her keyhole lips. You can only love me when I'm not here. You can only love me when there's nothing left to love. You press your cheek to the cool spread of linen beside her. You listen to the steady beat of your heart, the way you can feel it in your fingertips, entirely singular. Don't tell anyone, you say. Did you want it to die with me, Bet? She shifts, and her hair falls against the nape of your neck. Were you glad it was silenced? Don't tell anyone, you say again. She sighs, lays herself back down so you're face to face. Crooked nose, eye pulling from its socket, the onset of gray-green decay wreathing her jaw. The smell of soil and rot in cicada-heavy nighttime. Who could I tell? She brushes your hand. I'm not really here. And suddenly you can imagine it is your fists splitting beer cans in two like overripe fruit. It is your fingers on the matchbox, your fingers striking out. But you both know the house would still be on fire, and you both know you'd leave alone. You take her hand. You put your face in the crook of her neck and beg forgiveness from a ghost, noises from the wardrobe. I was crying when Mummy came to tuck me in for the night. Come on, Jamie, my love, dry those tears away. And please, let's not have any more of that silly nonsense about monsters in your wardrobe again tonight, she whispered, stroking my cheek. You know how cross Bill gets about it. Bill, my stepfather, a horrid man, always shouting at me for one thing or another. How I wish he and Mummy had never met. It was only since he had come to live with us that the scary noises had begun. But they are real, Mummy, I swear to you. I hear them. She sighed and stood up, padded over to the wardrobe and opened the door, revealing a small closet packed with my clothes on hangers, which she shuffled from side to side. See, sweetheart, only your clothes in here. There's nothing at all to be frightened of now, is there? I swallowed as hard as I could and managed a tiny little shake of my head. Bill stood watching at the door. He narrowed his eyes, giving me one of his mean sideways looks, and told me that if I disturbed them again that night, I would have to stay inside my room the whole of the following day. Mummy was watching me, so she didn't see the expression in his eyes. He never does it when she's looking. She smiled, kissed me again, and walked over to him. Look, we'll leave your nightlight on for you, my darling, she said. Good night now. It was my shivering that woke me. It was exactly 3 o'clock. I am sure of that because I heard our grandfather clock in the hall downstairs chime 3 times. I was ice cold. My duvet had tumbled to the floor and my fingers and toes felt numb. Outside it was ever so windy and raindrops were hammering against the window pane. I liked to keep my curtains open so I could see the man in the moon when he smiled at me. That night, though, I couldn't see him at all. The clouds were hiding him from me. I reached down for my duvet and wrapped it around me, blowing on my fingers to warm them up. That's when I heard it, the rattling of someone fiddling with the wardrobe doorknob. I longed to shout for Mummy, but I knew Bill would be angry if I disturbed them. Instead, I slowly pulled the pillow over my head and tried my best not to listen, but it was no use. Then came a familiar sound. My wardrobe door always creaked when you opened it slowly. I could tell that it was edging open, little by little. You couldn't mistake those short staccato creaks as the door jerked. It had to be the monster, and tonight it was coming out to get me. Normally it stayed inside the wardrobe. My heart began hammering in my ears so loudly, I remember being terrified that it would hear. Curling myself into a ball as tightly as I possibly could, I squeezed my eyes shut and bit down on my lip to stop myself from crying out loud. I remember tasting the blood as it trickled into my mouth, but I still didn't dare move an inch. Eventually, the door stopped moving, and I heard a shuffling of something brushing against wood. Peeping through my fingers, I was just about able to make out a human shape in the dim glow of my nightlight. A smallish figure was standing at the bottom of my bed, staring at me. I could hardly believe it. The monster was no bigger than me. But the thing was, it was pure evil. I just knew. I think that was when I wet the bed in terror. I couldn't help myself. But I couldn't let it know. I remember the sensation of warm liquid spreading down my legs and hoping that if I simply refused to budge, the horrid monster might not find out. Maybe if I recited the Lord's Prayer to myself, it would go away and leave me alone. It stayed there, watching me for ages, whilst I prayed with all my heart for it not to hurt me. Eventually it hissed, "It's time!" Then it stomped over to my door, cracked it open, and slipped out onto the landing. When I heard it knocking on my parents' bedroom door, I almost had heart failure. My stepfather would be furious. It hammered on the door again, and then I heard Bill groan and ask in his cross voice what the hell I thought I was up to. Suddenly, their bedroom door crashed open and slammed against the wall. What I heard in the next few seconds were the worst sounds I had ever heard in my entire life. First, there was a scuffling, and I heard Bill swear out loud. After that, there were lots of heavy crashes, followed by a kind of gurgling and a piercing shriek that sounded like Mummy's voice. Afterwards, I heard her screaming, screaming, and screaming. There were more bangs, then a few resounding thuds and weird moaning noises. And still, the screaming didn't stop. What could I do? I wanted to run and help Mummy, but how could I? Paralyzed by fear, I jammed my fingers hard into my ears to block out her screams. After what seemed like ages, there was silence. Utter silence. Not a sound. I tell you, that deafening silence was 10 times worse than the screaming. I then watched, horrified and open-mouthed, as the monster crept stealthily past my bed without so much as a single glance in my direction, wrenched the wardrobe door open, and stepped inside. It wasn't until it had pulled the door firmly shut with a click that I felt able to move. My pajama bottoms were still soaking wet, and now they felt yucky and cold. But I didn't even care. I jumped up and shot out of my room to see what the monster had done. It had hurt Mummy, I was certain. I had to help her. I spotted Bill first. He lay sprawled face down in the entrance to their bedroom. I didn't care two hoots about Bill, but where was Mummy? I needed to find Mummy. I leaped over the motionless form that had been my stepfather and slipped to my knees in a dark red, sticky puddle of gooey stuff, slowly expanding across the parquet from underneath his head. It was gross. I wiped my hands clean on my pajamas as I struggled to my feet and gazed around. The room looked like a scene from one of those scary murder movies Bill liked to watch on the TV. There she was, My dear mother was slumped sideways, half in, half out of the bed. Her frilly white nightdress was crimson. Her beautiful hazel eyes were wide open, still full of shock, her mouth gaping in a now silent scream. A huge kitchen knife protruded from her throat. I recognized it. It was the sharp, shiny one from the back of the kitchen drawer, the one Bill always used to carve the lamb on Sundays. As gently as I could, I gripped the smooth brown handle of the knife and tried to lever it out of her poor, lifeless body, but it was ever so difficult to do. When it finally came free, there was an awful slurping noise, and more blood trickled down her neck. I fell backwards and let the knife drop to the floor. The coppery smell of all that blood was suddenly overpowering. I think that must have been when I began to scream. I was still screaming when the police broke down the door, having been alerted by Mr. Wilson, our next-door neighbor. I very quickly learned that, just like Mummy and Bill, they didn't believe there was anything or anybody in the wardrobe. Even to this day, nobody believes a word of what I say. It has become unbearably hot in this room. I start to feel skittish and wipe my sweaty palms up and down my jumpsuit legs to prevent my knees from jiggling up and down. It is made of scratchy nylon material. Horrid orange color, too. My jaw clenches tight. "Why doesn't anybody believe me, doctor?" I whisper through gritted teeth. That's all I can remember. I swear to God I have not invented anything. It is honestly what happened on the night my mother and that man were killed. My hands ball themselves into fists. I have learned this is not considered good behavior, however, so I force myself to uncurl them, finger by finger, and carefully place both my rigid hands, palm down, and fingers outstretched on my lap. Tears are flowing, dripping from my chin to my chest. I let them fall, but they begin to cause the cloth to become clammy, and it sticks to my chest. Feels like blood. God, I can't stand it. My left eye twitches and I begin to rock back and forth. My throat is dry. I feel myself slipping. Dr. Simpson is staring at me. "All right, James, I think that is more than enough for today," he says, removing his spectacles and placing them with his pen and pad on the small table at his side. "You've done well. This is fine progress we have made this afternoon. I believe our sessions are finally getting somewhere." He then smiles and reaches for my hand. I'm sweating, shaking, still sobbing. "I'm proud of you, James. This is the first time in the 11 years you've been in here with us that you have actually mentioned these sentiments of ambivalence towards your stepfather. It is excellent that you are beginning to admit and evacuate any feelings of pent-up hatred you have been suppressing all this time." He hands me a small plastic cup and presses a button on his pager. "Here you go now. Take your meds. Look, the nurse is here to escort you back to your ward. I'll see you for our next session, same time next week."